Yeah, Evie Fitzgerald was on the show last night. This is very interesting stuff. He wants the LGFA and the GAA to be under the one umbrella. This is after the Cork-Galway debacle at the weekend on Sunday. The county's given just 2 hours to adjust to the fact that they're playing at Croke Park. Galway are en route to Croke Park, to Dublin at the time, originally to Parnell Park, and Fitzgerald says it's time to amalgamate them.
I think the professionalism of what we do now is kind of outgrown the administrative side of the LGFA, in the sense that, you know, they don't have any pitches of their own. We wouldn't have the financial support in terms of crowds at games and stuff. So, like, I think the natural progression for me would be an amalgamation between ourselves and the GAA. No, I know that's maybe looking at a simplistic view, but I think it has to happen if we're going to get equality, is what we're looking for. I mean, we have equality in so many areas of our life now in terms of racism and LGBT and everything else. You know, we need to start looking at it from a sporting point of view, and not just from the point of view of yesterday's game. That's hopefully it'll be a bit of a watershed, but in terms of trying to attract young people into football, you know, we're hearing about obesity, and, you know, I'm a teacher myself and I teach disadvantaged kids, so I'm acutely aware of the importance of sport. You know, but if you're you know, a young girl, and I'm not talking about very young now, but if you're a teenager looking at that, you're saying to yourself, what's the point? You know, if elite athletes are getting treated like that, where are we going? So I do think it's, and it's not having to cut off the LGFA. I mean, there are circumstances, I can understand all of that, but I do think that, you know, if we're to progress this thing, we need to move on.
Yeah, so on that, I'm delighted to say we've got Liam O'Neill, the former president of the GAA, with us. Liam, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, great, thank you.
Yeah, so Evie Fitzgerald makes a very straightforward case there. And in life, like many things, things look straightforward on paper. This is an issue that you actually tried to address when you were president, I believe. Can you talk us through the history of the talks around amalgamation between the Camogie Association, the LGFA and the GAA?
Yeah, I certainly can. Yeah, that was done in my second year as president. We started it in 2013. I thought I'd have 2013, 2014. I was going in 2015, and I thought I could have progressed it a good bit. The history of it is that I grew up in a family with 7 sisters. No opportunities for girls in sport at that stage. The world has moved on. Ladies football was founded in 1974, recognised, and things have moved on since that. It came up, I was out in Australia in 1999 doing development courses with GA clubs. And I was in a room in Australia, in Brisbane, and the night had gone really well until I was asked a question, and I gave an answer which showed that the 3 organisations were separate. And the room just stopped. And people just stared at me in disbelief. And I said, I'm sorry, but that is the case. And I resolved that night I was never going to be as embarrassed again. And I said, if I ever got a chance, I would try to bring the organisation together, because it's the right thing to do, simply as simple as that. So in my presidency, I put the offer to the Camogie and ladies football. We went as far as visiting each other's central councils and putting the case. And the GA Central Council said yes, they were willing to go. The Camogie Council said they were willing to go. The ladies football, LGFA, said a blank. And it wasn't just the leadership of the organisation, this was the full Central Council, every county there. They said no. So that was more or less that, because you can't force a marriage, you can't force a union on people who didn't want it. And I'm not being critical, I understood they felt they had good reasons, and that was it. But we haven't moved on in the meantime. And what happened this weekend, I don't care what way we look at it, it reflects poorly on us all. People outside, and Evie said there about the young girl looking at us, or the young woman looking at us, they don't understand the history, they don't understand why it can't be done. And quite simply, it has to be done. If we were designing the GA at the moment, we would not design what we have. And I would also include handball and rounders in that too. We have 6 sports and we have 5 separate organisations. It's crazy. It can't go on. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that change is more possible right now than it ever was at any point in the history of mankind. I walked into a bank last week with a coat muffled up around me and a mask on. Nobody looked sideways. If I had done that a year ago, I'd have been attacked from all sides as a danger. But the world has changed, and we have to change with it.
No, it's a great point, Liam. Can you talk? Did you go to that Central Council meeting with the LGFA? Did you?
I did, and I don't really want to because if I tell you the story, it'll look like that I'm bitter about what happened. It wasn't an easy night.
Well, sorry, I don't want you to come across in any way bitter. I'm just trying to get an understanding of the other side of the argument? Because it's, I guess there must be another side of the argument if there was resistance at that point and it was so widespread.
Oh, there was, of course. And you see, it's not easy. What I was proposing wasn't easy, because if it was easy, it would have been not long ago. We were in a position where you want to change, you have to dismantle, deconstruct 3 organisations and build a new one. And that's not easy, because people have positions. And people look at, what's in this for me? How is this going to affect me? That's the first thing happens when you suggest change. People say, how is this going to change my circumstances? And I suppose, to be honest, there wasn't a huge amount of trust in the thing. They thought we wanted to take over. How? I wasn't prepared for that, quite frankly. I didn't think they would see it like that. But the time wasn't right. It was a good idea, but that apparently wasn't the time for it. They weren't ready for it. So
if you were to take those learnings, though, I guess, and because it seems like the point you make about now being a good time to strike, how would you approach it in 2021, say?
I approach it in 2021 by going, this happened, this is the most obvious example that's happened to players. What happened this weekend is not about the organisation. What happened this weekend was about the players, and about the players not getting the fair shake and not getting what they could get if we were one organisation. The possibilities for the one organisation are absolutely immense in terms of facility, in terms of organising games, in terms of putting ladies' games on, putting women's sport on the same platform on the same day as our major games. Croke Park is there. It's underused. Our facilities around the country are underused. Honest to God, we could do so much more. We need to have clubs where they have small number of games taking place during the week. We need to have some of them designated as camogie pitches in camogie counties, as ladies football pitches. We need to build cooperations and say there's a guarantee that a game will take place this weekend because we have 3, 4, 5 options for this. We have the infrastructure. We had pitches available last weekend. I've no doubt about that. If we were one organisation, it wouldn't happen. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that having one organisation would end all problems. Of course, there will always be difficulties. Of course, the difficulties now is where hurling is strong, football has difficulty, and vice versa in counties where football is strong, the hurling has difficulties with pitches and with structures. But all those can be overcome if the major thing is there has to be a willingness to change, there has to be a willingness to join, there has to be a willingness to do it for the right reasons. For the costs alone, I had a good friend, Eve Eagle, when I was president. She was working with handball, and she played handball. She was a member of her GA club, and she was a member of ladies football, and it cost her 50 for membership of each one. I thought that was crazy at the time. The woman had to pay 150 where I paid 50, just to be a member, because she wanted to play handball, she wanted to play ladies football, and she wanted to be a member of a local club as part of her community. Those costs are not sustainable. It costs much more for a young girl to play ladies football from Mogi than it costs a boy to play hurling, because of the structure of costs and because we're sustaining 3 organisations. Insurance could be much better. Our buying power, our ability to buy gear, to order stuff for pitches, all that would be much stronger if we were one organisation. And also, we would fulfil our mandate, which is to bring Gaelic games to every person on this island and further afield who wants to play Gaelic games. We could do that if we were one organisation. But it would take a leap of faith. Stephen, there's no point in saying any different. It would take a leap of faith. It would take trust. But we have to go to the players and say, do you want the status quo to continue, or are you willing to stand up and say, we want change, we want a different organisation?
Liam, when it comes to players potentially driving this merger to a certain extent as well, because it's the players who will have felt the most frustrated about what happened last weekend, is there potential here for some middle ground, given particularly that the women's GPA and the GPA are talking about a potential merger at the same time? Absolutely.
But they should never have been separate. They should never have been separate. They should never have been separate organisations from the start, because there was no need for it, because the women's GPA is only formed a couple of years ago. That should have been a united group from the start, and that would have sent a very clear message to the administrators and to those who didn't want to change and didn't want to have one organisation.
I appreciate you said, Liam, that 6 years ago it was almost a straight out no from the LGFA when those discussions were taking place and options were being explored. But did it ever get to a point in the discussions between the central councils about what the umbrella organisation might actually look like? Because it seems that most of the concern here was about who would have positions in terms of this new organisation, or, you know, coming together of all three. Did the discussions ever kind of advance that far that you were able to make a picture of what it might look like?
Yes, they did. We had a vision that the organisation, that there couldn't be a takeover, for instance. There's a structure there. It would take a group to run Camogie. It would take a group to run ladies football, and there was a group there. They would have had to be subsumed into it. We went even as far as to suggest that there might have to be an overarching CEO and an overarching structure. Central Council would have to change, and we'd have one CEO, and then have the Ard Stewardship of each one of the organisations would be on a level below that. We thought that structure. We thought it out that far. Now, the whole issue of governance, the whole issue of clubs, membership of clubs, the club constitution, all that would have had to be looked in. This can't be done by just sort of a blessing and say, now we're united. There will be a good bit of work in this. Governance would be a huge issue. The maintenance of property would be an issue. All those things are out there, and we recognise that. But I don't want to emphasise the people in that room that night said no. It wasn't every lady in ladies football, or every lady. The Camogie said yes, by the way. It wasn't everyone out on the ground said it. I was approached by a number of players during my presidency, and I was thanked for the fact that I made an effort, and they said that they would prefer to be part of the GAA. And one of the most significant things, I visited between 450 and 500 primary schools in my 3 years. I made a point of visiting young people. Every time I looked into the young girls' faces, they wanted the GAA logo. It was a lovely logo. Now, I think the Camogie and LGFA logos are great too. They could have been incorporated alongside. But I think the message to a young girl who wants to play Gaelic games, who sees the GAA as the route she wants to go, I think having the logo, having the equal rights is a huge message to them. It's a huge boost, and really the position of women in society has changed drastically. The GAA would not be the organisation it is without the organisational power of women on our committees at club level around the country. I say that without, nobody can contradict that. Any place I visited where I opened new pitches or new dressing rooms, there was always a strong ladies' presence on the committee, because women are better organisers than men.
Liam,
that's fact.
I'm very conscious of the fact that it's three men having this conversation here, and that we wanted to get your side of this. And we obviously have spoken over the last few days to the organisers from Galway, and we've also heard from EFI last night as well. Was the GAA ready to have an influx of women into the committees and demanding pitches and equal access to pitches? Because I think that might have been one of the things that spooked the LGFA in actually the whole way through, is that they don't have equal access to pitches. Are we saying that that would automatically be something that would be welcomed by the overwhelmingly male GAA?
I've told you, I was reared with 7 girls. You know, families are mixed. Men are living with women. We're not different creatures. You know, we all live in families. We're all part of the one family. The modern family wants the child, all the children looked after, and we're doing that very, very well with our underage structure up as far as Go Games, up as far as 11. We are looking after boys and girls all across the country. It goes after that because, for medical reasons, girls are not allowed to play with boys from 12 on. We are doing that as it is. The modern family wants the full family looked after, and the modern family wants the woman of the house, if she wants to play Gaelic game, they want her to have the rights too. Yes, there would be difficulties. There would be. Everyone can't have the pitch at 7:30 on Tuesday. You know, so there would have to be an accommodation. There would have to be work. But what I'm saying is, it could have been done 6 years ago. It can be done now. But I do want to emphasise to anyone listening this morning to me, I am not castigating anyone in the LGFA for not doing it at that time. That was their decision. They had the right to do it, and I've no outhand to them at all. That's the way it was. But now is different. Now is 6 years. The world has moved changed more in the last 6 years than it did in the previous 60. And we have to go with that. Yes, there would be difficulty. Yes, there would be problems which would be difficult to surmount, but they can be surmounted. We have the brightest young population in Europe at the moment, well qualified. We have an idea that we're not using. If we sat down and set a task to a group of young people to come up with a structure, I can guarantee you they would come up with it.
Yeah, fair enough. Liam, great to have you with us. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Very well.
Liam O'Neill, former GAA president there, who obviously has tried in the past to get that merger across the line. We'll see where that conversation goes. We would love to hear from you. Your views, 0879 180 180 is the number. We'll take a quick break. We're back talking grassroots sport after these.